Well, good morning. Welcome to Unity on the Avenue. Obviously, I am Reverend Doris, and our prayer chaplain is Opal, and we are here to be together this morning. We are unapologetically inclusive here, which means that everyone who comes, we are delighted to have, no matter how they might be different from us. Our statement of faith: there is only one power and one presence in the universe and in my life, God the good, omnipotent.
Reflection. I reflect the brilliant light of God, God the one presence and the one power in the universe is expressing through all people, the natural world, and all other aspects of life. If ever I doubt the presence of God, I need only behold the world around me. The light of God is being reflected in the kind words and acts of people, in the beauty and the magnificence of nature, and in life's grand rhythms and moments that are fleeting. I too reflect the brilliance of God. My ideas, my dreams, and all that I do to make my mark on the universe are in some ways part of the divine, expressing itself uniquely through me. Living from my divinity, I bring more of God's light into the world. I bring the kindness, I bring love, I bring joy, I bring vision, wisdom, and generosity. Amen.
So we're starting a series on essential spirituality. And because of people buying books and borrowing books and returning them, last week there are books, Ken has them in the back. I have other things in the front that I'm going to talk about. So if you haven't gotten a book and you would like one, know that they're over there for you to buy or borrow. It's a fascinating book to me because I don't remember, don't even for a half a second worry about Kathy talking. I want someone to. We're going to call on her. So most of the books we do are spirituality based. And I know this has the word in the title, Essential Spirituality, but Roger Walsh is a college professor. He's Australian. He began life as not exactly an atheist, but as an agnostic. So he's not writing from a spiritual point of view, and yet what he has discovered over his lifetime is that the wisdom of spirituality is valuable even if you don't consider yourself to be spiritual. So we know that the coming together for a collective spiritual experience honestly happens at the quantum level, and we aren't going to spend time talking about quantum physics right now, but it happens across time and space in the spaces. So I'm just going to leave it there for right now. So we know that it happens that way. As Christians, we find it in the teachings of Jesus and the Fillmores. So we know from our study this summer that the Sikhs find it in the teachings of Guru Nanak. Walsh isn't looking for a spiritual experience, yet he finds spiritual teachings beneficial. And I find that to be pretty fascinating. As we experience this more, we open up to more of our self with a capital S. And spiritual merging is the practice we engage in to dissolve the boundaries between our singular self and our spiritual self, to become one with each other. Now, to have a college professor who would not claim to be spiritual teaching us all this in this book, I find to be fascinating. So part of each week is going to be involved in the practice of journaling. What Roger's telling you is that you have to do the practices to experience the benefits. So what he's telling you is it's not enough to read this book. He said some of you could read it this afternoon and not be changed because you read it. You could say, oh, that was interesting, and you would be done. Some of you might think, oh, I just have to listen to Doris on Sunday. That's enough. Well, he's saying, nope, that ain't going to get it. You have to do the work. And what, of course, I find interesting, and I'm hoping somebody can actually tell me, is how does unity say this? Principle number 5. Action. It's not enough to know the truth. You have to live the truth that you know. And that is what he's teaching. So here we have a college professor who doesn't consider himself spiritual or religious, teaching that in order for you to experience the benefits that are in this book, you have to do the work. I love it. And so one of the ways that he expects you to do that is by journaling. And I know that some of you already have a practice of journaling, but I'm guessing some of you don't have a practice of journaling. And I want to help you. These journals that are up here are for anyone who doesn't have a journal. If you have a journal and you want a special journal for this, you are allowed to take that. So, you've got up here, you've got a journal you can help yourself to. And every week, you will have the journaling questions for you to work with. But I'm going to make you walk all the way up here and get them. So that's kind of what you have to look forward to for the next, till November 4th, for the next 7 weeks after this week. So, let's see, always a challenge for me to read my own notes. So there are 7 aspects to this spiritual journey, which you see reflected in the tree. So we want to cultivate kindness, love, joy, peace, vision, wisdom, and generosity. Isn't it interesting that those are the things that he found in other world religions that are beneficial for a wonderful life? So that's what's on the tree that you see. Carl Jung says, it's high time we realize that it's pointless to praise the light and preach it if nobody can see us do it. It's much more needful to teach people the art of being. So we're going to be the spiritual practice that we talk about. In unity, we recognize that God isn't the supreme being. I know everyone in this room knows that he's not the guy in a long nightgown and beard in the sky, which is a perfect representation of Zeus, by the way, that God is part of us. Walsh says that world religion in particular implies a concern with the sacred and supreme values of life. So that's the word religion. He says spirituality, on the other hand, and a lot of us prefer to call ourselves spiritual rather than religious. Spiritual practices are those that help us experience the sacred, which is the most essential and central part of our lives. So essential spirituality is going to address how we can create the direct experiences through our own practices. So I'm wondering how many of you let me rephrase that. If you consider that you have and indulge in a spiritual practice. If so, are you willing to share with us what your spiritual practice is? And Ken will give you a microphone. All right, thank you, Roseanne.
When I remember, I like to do everything as a service to the divine, like reading a book or washing dishes, even simple things, do as a gift to the divine. And then you'll find that you're doing it with love, and that you're in the moment, and that you're paying attention to detail. And it's a good way to remember God. And it turns an everyday occurrence into a sacred one.
Awesome, Roseanne. Thank you. That's Brother Lawrence's chop wood and carry water. What do you do before you're enlightened? Chop wood and carry water. What do you do after you're enlightened? Chop wood and carry water. Anybody else have a spiritual practice that they're willing to share?
I'm not sure this should count as a spiritual practice, but deep breathing is something that I do and do increasingly in a challenging year I've been through, and it just helps me to be calm and to be in the present more and to let worries go by.
I think that is a spiritual practice. It's what brings us back to center. Thank you.
I have sort of a new one. I've discovered on YouTube these wonderful videos, meditation videos, and it just goes all over the world with all the beautiful creations of God. And we've gotten so every night before we go to bed, we just sit back and look at those, and I just sort of wonder at the beauty of the earth and the magnificence of the creation of God. And it's been just a very wonderful way to end the day.
It is.
Yeah.
Time for meditation. And unfortunately, a lot of us get locked into an idea of what meditation is. But I think what you're talking about is a wonderful form of meditation. Anybody else? Clyde, awesome.
For those of you who know me, you would probably not be surprised. A book or a person that really has spoken to me is Ken Kai's Handbook to Higher Consciousness. Mm-hmm. And he has 12 pathways to higher consciousness. And he said it's not enough you can read over them, but it's not enough, he said, to read over them. You need to memorize them and have them internalized so that you can use them in your everyday life. So I've memorized them, and I say them, take 5 minutes just to say them to myself every day. I'm just hoping that maybe some of them might take hold, but that's my spiritual practice.
Awesome. And I know some of you love Don Miguel Ruiz's work and his 5 principles. So what calls you back to center, breathing, whatever, is awesome. I personally always hesitate to give you 5 steps to anything or 3 steps to anything, because it makes, for me, I'm only talking about Doris, when I hear that, I'm always disappointed. If I try those 5 steps and they aren't some miracle thing, then I'm disappointed that it didn't work that way. So I would rather embrace how you live your life and find within that living what your spiritual practices might be. All right, I'm going to ask you this question. Why do you do the spiritual practice? Isn't anyone willing to share that? What are you hoping to gain? Why do you do it?
Well, it's one way to tame your mind. If you have a mind that jumps all over the place or that gets into negativity, a spiritual practice that you do regularly can help you become the master of your mind.
I love it, Roseanne. That's awesome. I'm going to let you do the service some Sunday. I like it. It allows you to tame your mind. The other way of saying it is sort of saying it the other way around. It allows you to wake up. And you're waking up from the habits of your mind. So calm them or wake up, one or the other. Whichever one resonates more clearly with you becomes an important practice. Somehow we want to know who we truly are. And we talked a little bit about that the last couple of weeks in terms of, every Sunday we repeat our prayer for the protection, and each line ends with, I am that. And if you're like me, you may believe it for that 5 seconds it takes to say that, but are you believing it on Tuesday afternoon? Are you believing it on Thursday night? So being awake and present to the divine presence that is the divine, or we can say God, or we can say part of the universe, that helps us. The way Walsh describes it is it allows our hearts to open, fear and anger to melt, greed and jealousy to dwindle, happiness and joy to grow, love to blossom, and peace to replace agitation and drama. It allows your wisdom to mature and your health to improve. Who doesn't want all of those things? So knowing that you have a spiritual practice will allow you to gain those benefits. And, this isn't to impose any particular spiritual practice on you, except I am encouraging you to write how you respond to these thoughts. That's what the questions are for. The other things that you'll notice with your worksheet is it's going to say Reverend Stephanie Sy. Now, she's a Unity minister in Pennsylvania. She's a friend of mine, and she's the one who recommended this book that the SET team chose. And then she offered me the worksheets that she created. And I said, please send them, and she did. So those are here, right here, for you to pick up. Anyway, so our spiritual practices bring us our greatest gifts. Walsh calls it the perennial philosophy. So it doesn't matter what religion you follow, the perennial wisdom comes because it has worked over centuries. So we're going to study Buddhism, we're going to study Islam, we're going to look at all these different world religions, and he uses each of them to focus on a different aspect that is a gift that we receive. He says that accumulated wisdom is vast in scope, profound in depth, and it offers numerous insights into the nature of life, love, health, and happiness, suffering, and salvation. We don't talk a lot about salvation in Unity because we know that you aren't damned to any place like that. However, we can save ourselves, which is the only way we get saved. He says there are 4 actual observations. First is that there are 2 realms of reality, and human beings take part in both of those. They can recognize their divine spark, and they realize that they're human. So we're having a human experience that includes the hard parts of life that we notice, but we can remember that we are divine, which helps get us through the hard parts. So we're physical and spiritual. Physical is the material world. Spiritual is the realm of consciousness. So we cannot be divorced from God, he says, but are eternally and intimately linked to it. It is a word that we don't use a lot, but referring to God as it is the proper pronoun. It's not he. We sing gift of the goddess. Most of us refer to God as she, and yet God is it. So even though we aren't going to pray and talk about it, we aren't going to talk about it in that way, Centers for Spiritual Living are much more apt to call God it than we are. And yet, acknowledging in at least part of us that that's what God is important, Walsh says. It's important that we recognize our divine spark and the sacred ground of being that is its source. Ground of being in that it's in all the major world religions. Walsh says no other experience is so ecstatic, no other attainment so rewarding, no goal so beneficial as the wise, diverse traditions of the ages. He talks about there are three things that's important, three forms of wisdom: that we live ethically, that we concentrate, and that we choose to develop wisdom or spiritual maturity. As time goes on, he begins to recognize there are other practices, so he talks about the practices in the way that we develop wisdom. This is a weird talk. What can I say? The word religion has many meanings. In particular, it implies a concern with the sacred and supreme values of life, whereas he contrasts it to spirituality, which is about the experience, not words about the sacred. If any of you have ever been part of a drumming circle, some of you are part of the Buddhist meditation that's here on Monday nights, which is an awesome experience. Different ways to actually experience the divine, experience that connection. So one of the wisdom teachings that the Jewish tradition offers says the key to everything is the way you start. I thought that was pretty interesting. So some of us are all or nothing people. I'll do it all, and then when you fail, you quit and never do it again. He's suggesting that you start easy, or the Jewish wisdom tradition is suggesting that you should start easy, expect to make mistakes, and simply start again. I like that. They also suggest that you should begin by deciding how long you're going to do it, to make it an experiment. So in our case, you might make a decision to try all this for the next 7 weeks and see how it happens. See if it works for you. It says with your intention to make no exceptions. So I don't know about you, but I start out to exercise, and my days to exercise are Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And the hard part for me is if I don't do it on Wednesday, I'm not going to do it on Thursday or Friday. If I do it on Wednesday, then I only have to do it on Thursday. Do you see what I mean? If you notice how you start, your own habits of personality. Some of you are just really dedicated and decision-oriented and committed so that you work through every step always, all the way. If you're like me and you kind of waffle just a little, don't make exceptions in your intentions. Decide to do it today And then tomorrow you can decide, I'm just going to do it today. Do you see what I mean? And keep going. It also says, be gentle with yourself. If you fall short, no big deal. Acknowledge it. Explore your feelings about why you didn't do it in your journal, and then start again. And be sure to note your own successes. So if you did it, it's okay to pat yourself on the back and make sure you write that in your journal. And the most important one is to enjoy yourself in the process. I was struck when I read that one of our 12 powers is joy, and it's one of the most elusive ones for me to ever talk about when I'm talking about 12 powers. So how can you examine and feel and express your joy? By enjoying yourself. So he uses a lot of metaphors. We tend to call them metaphysical interpretations in unity. Awakening, we know what that means. He talks about dehypnotizing yourself. So that has to do with waking up. Enlightenment, we don't really sort of have a goal of enlightenment in unity, but spiritual maturity, which is language we use, and second tier consciousness, those of you who studied spiral dynamics with me, those are all goals that we have. Uncovering, he talks about. We don't talk about uncovering, but it's finding and noticing your own spiritual self. He talks about wholeness, and that's about becoming whole and recognizing that we're both spiritual and human. Journey, I use that word a lot, so you should be used to the word journey. He talks about death and rebirth, and he's not talking about physical death and rebirth. He's talking about the old false self must yield to make way for the new and true. And that image feels like dying. So dying to the old, coming awake to the new, is part of what he talks about. What we're after is what Matthew calls the pearl of great price. Christianity says that the kingdom of heaven is within, which is a key teaching. It's in Luke. Islam, Muhammad said, those who know themselves know their Lord. Confucianism, those who know completely their own nature know heaven. The Chinese Book of Changes, which is the I Ching. In the depths of the soul, one sees the divine, the one. Hinduism teaches Atman, individual consciousness, and Brahman, universal consciousness, are one. Buddhism, look within. You are the Buddha. Just really brief sentences that describe that the oneness is within you. So that isn't something unity made up. It's something that's been taught for hundreds of years and practiced. We have blocks, he says, to transpersonal development. And he talks a lot about transpersonal psychology too in here. So the blocks are society. We live in this world. Charles Fillmore called that race consciousness. So we have to change traditional assumptions about what's important. We're questioning the myths that society teaches us. For example, he says, money can guarantee happiness. Our nation is superior. More is better. Personal belief systems. You know, we talked about the values in terms of our value systems shaped our personality. We learned those from our caregivers when we're children. They may or may not be true. Interestingly enough, he says one of the biggest blocks is our fear of success. And that reminded me of my absolute favorite Marianne Williamson quote. I'm guessing that some of you know that. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Just using those words in terms of ourselves makes some of us absolutely cringe. So Walsh is saying it's our fear of success that blocks us from our spiritual journey. And a fear of weakness, a fear of change. I teach that a lot in terms of, what Unity is here to do. It's part of Unity Worldwide's vision statement. It's part of your vision statement. We're here to transform ourselves. And the hard part of that is we can't transform ourselves if we aren't willing to change. So I teach it over and over again, and then I run up splat against this in my own face in the ways that I don't want to change. And I don't want the world to change, and I don't want my kids. Anyway, so that fear of change that we talk about, embrace, and we get to try again and again. And the living of our story, which goes back to the values we learn. We all have a story about life. This is how it is. It's never going to change. It's never going to be any different. This is the way it was. It's the way it was for my parents. It's the way it is for me. I watch my kids. It's the way it is for them. It's just a story, It is not true. And learning that story we tell ourselves over and over again isn't true is one of the most important things that we can do. So he's offering us what he calls spiritual discipline, a set of practices designed to foster our own further growth. He says that what you need is a spiritual community to practice this. You are the best spiritual community I've ever seen. And he says that even though it's possible to make progress alone, that doing it with the support of a community and a teacher is invaluable. So we're here to transform our motivation, cultivate emotional wisdom, live ethically together, awaken our interior spiritual vision, cultivate our spiritual intelligence, and express spirit in action. The words of the Buddha spoken 2,500 years ago. However many holy words you read, however many holy words you speak, what good will they do you if you do not act on them? So I invite you to take a deep breath, let it out, and to join with me as we create a collective consciousness in this room. We allow ourselves to hear the sounds of the room and not be distracted by them. Inviting you to monitor your own breathing. Inhaling and exhaling. allowing the spaces between us to be erased. As we have moments of spiritual maturity, we share them with the energy of the group. As we have moments of doubt, we tap into the energy that is offered to us by others. In the moments of stillness, we feel that connection, a heart connection that encompasses all of those who are part of our community but are not in this room this morning. Knowing that whatever their moments of needing our love and energy, we're here to offer it. Breathing into those spaces. Sending our love over the mountains, sending our love over the sea, sending our love into the heavens, knowing that it's always returned to us, multiplied, transformed into whatever it is we need in this moment. Holding that truth together, we celebrate with great gratitude all of the gifts that we have. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen. Our Alleluia together. We know that we are one, and so it is. So, this is the time where you have an opportunity to share with the community. And as you're going to share with community, you might remember the leaks that our sprinkler system is putting into our basement right now. So when you add leaks from the sprinkler system to rain, it's not a good thing. So we are running the dehumidifier a lot downstairs. And we are blessed and abundant. And I invite you to bless our gifts with me. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. We actually have a live child to bless today. So I invite you all to join me in blessing Kathy. Kathy, you are loved, special, and important. We see you and bless the divine being that you are. Thank you, sweetheart. Yay, Kathy. You can go back to Daddy now. You're a good girl. Thank you for your help. Highlight of the whole service. So join with us in our prayer for protection and listen to yourself. The light of God surrounds us. I am that light. The love of God enfolds us. I am that love. The power of God protects us. I am that power. The presence of God watches over us. I am that presence. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.